Hi everyone, it's Henry here, and as some of you may know, we're pretty fond of Space Wolves on this channel, and there's a model that I have wanted to do, or a project that I've wanted to do since the Saturnine box first appeared last year for Heresy, and that was to put a Wolflord in some Saturnine Praetor armour and see just how cool I could make him look. So that's what I did. I hope you enjoy. Let's paint. So I have plenty of Space Wolf bits and plenty of Saturnine Terminators. And as I say, this idea has been rattling around my brain since the middle of last year, or even earlier when we first saw those pictures of Saturnine Terminator armour. Now, I am a huge fan of it, as I've spoken about in the past. It's massive. Like, it's properly massive. It's kind of between Terminator and Dreadnought size. So that means that it opens up the possibility of different bits you can use, is particularly with the Saturnine stuff, the Praetor, sorry. You know, you can look at using pieces from Dreadnoughts and stuff potentially, which I've seen people do. And I decided to, well, I've done several of them. So I grabbed this word bearer I did a while back. I'll link the video up if I remember to, which apparently is really cool. Apparently you can do possessed command squads for Saturnine for word bearers now, which is awesome. And just to try sort of sizes out for different things. And then I started to, a tip Ben, our commissions chief, gave me, was just to have a little tray to keep things like paints and stuff to do with particular projects in. Particularly if you can be a little scatterbrained like I can, where I'm working on a few different things, it just collates them and keeps them all together. So it's just snipping off various bits that I thought might fit. And I'm showing you there one of the axes. I used the hand out of this for that Iron Hands Praetor I did for the release. You can see just how ridiculously enormous the weapons are on the Praetor. That was the double-handed axe from the new Space Wolves Terminator kit. And then you've got, I thought, oh, maybe I could use this hammerhead off Arjack, because I really love it on particularly Warhammer models where they have a more realistically sized weapon, not like a heroic scale one, but that was just too small. And one thing I'd thought about a lot, I've been enjoying reading about sort of Middle Ages and Dark Ages history the last sort of year or so, and reading books around it, TV shows and all that sort of stuff. And one of the things I never realised was what a big deal spears were. Like, having a spear was like a sign of quality, rather than I'm kind of used to in Warhammer, like the spearmen are your mooks kind of thing. And I thought, what we don't have enough of is power spears in Warhammer, in my opinion. And this felt like a great opportunity to make one, particularly that cool out the box pose, which I've used for this guy, which is the one I wanted, which is that awesome, foot up on the rock, looking really brooding and stoic. So I was hunting through, but again, the problem was I couldn't just use a normal power sword because it was too small. The blade was too short. It just looked ridiculous. And I sort of got a few that I thought might work, and then out of the Bix box, completely just loose in the bottom of it, was this power sword from the second edition Heresy box, when we first got loads of new plastic Heresy stuff. And for me, it was ludicrously large for the power armored dude, but perfect for Saturnine, in my opinion. So that was it. This was one of those moments where it was when you've had an idea that you've almost built and painted in your head, and then you realise, oh, actually, maybe I can realise it, I can do it. And this mini is just, it's for fun. It's to enjoy the process and enjoy the project itself to have, on the shelf. So it was time to prep the hammer to receive the blade. Nothing particularly complicated. As with all of this, I'm just trying to cut small pieces away at a time. I'm terrible for doing too big cuts without checking, was it measure twice, cut once type thing, and then having to glue everything back together. So I wanted to really try and take my time with this one. But actually it all went remarkably smoothly. And like, it's all plastic as well. I really didn't want to do any sculpting on this mini. I wanted this to be a kit bash. I would love to do more sculpting on the channel. I need to get better at it, essentially. I'm confident in doing a bit of fur. I'm confident in sort of fixing an area of robe or things like that. But I'm not hugely confident with sculpting, because I haven't done it in much in the last few years. But I think we'll probably feature a bit more of that as I get more in the groove with it. But certainly, kit bashing I love. I'm sure loads of you like me just have so many ideas, and think you just need a bit of confidence and a bit of plastic glue and just go for it. And it's remarkable what you can come up with. So here I've used, obviously I'm just pinning it in to give it a bit of added strength. So a little dot of super glue on the end of the brass rod. And I use 1mm brass rod for things like this. I also just have a box of paper clips for stuff that's not so important and stuff where I need that little bit of flexibility. But stuff where I want it really rigid and really, supportive, I'm tend to use the brass rod. And then because I had carved away into essentially sort of the raw plastic that was at the core of the hammer, I needed to add a tiny bit of detail back in. So here I got out some of my stamping foil. So this is it's called stamping foil. It's very, very thin foil, or thicker than your kitchen foil, but thin sheets of foil. And then I pop it over a silicone mat and I just punch out rivets, whatever size you want. Just punch them out with the drill bit. Be careful you don't stab it through your finger, as I often do. I have done on previous videos. You'd probably be better to put it in a pin drill and use that, but I'm quite impatient. And then, so I just wanted to put a couple of these little rivets on the upward facing surface on here, just so it looks more deliberate that this was a piece was designed, as you see it, rather than it being something I've hacked and smooshed together to create. But I was really, really happy with that, how the spear came out. And I think it's such an important part of the model. I love this mini anyway, and I didn't want to change it too much, but I think with Space Wolves particularly, they have an identity, and I wanted this to be a 30k Space Wolf, and therefore I didn't mind there being certain more obviously Imperial type decorations, but it still needed quite a lot of wolf stuff. So it was an interesting exercise in restraint, but also knowing I was probably going to have to do more to this than I would for, say, certain other legions. And that was really a case of just looking at lots of the different artwork, looking at the existing models, and just trying to find a few different, design cues to follow, to run with. So I just want to say a huge thank you to those of you that support us over on Patreon. You allow Andy and I to do this full time and then support the rest of the team, particularly the commission studio as well, the MPO and all those other projects we're doing. At the moment, Andy's just finished off this amazing looking swooping hawk as part of the Painter Normal Army Man Quite Nicely challenge, which we're running for a couple of months. You can jump in on that over on the Discord. You don't need to be a patron to jump in on the challenge, but the videos for what Andy has done are over on Patreon for it. Again, you'll get your extra videos over there and some other bits, and we just hugely appreciate that support. If you can't support us over there for whatever reason, then pop a comment down below if you've enjoyed the video, hit the like button, share it. That's a really huge one over here on YouTube, sort of sharing videos. Really helps that visibility, and we really, really do appreciate it. So as I say, thinking about design cues and stuff like that, I didn't want to shy away from wolfy bits. I enjoy that. It's fun, right? In my opinion. Anyway, whenever I'm doing Space Wolves, it's relaxing. I stick on Wardruna in the background and just get to it. And I thought that the chest is such an obvious place, and I've seen some brilliant conversions or kit bashes people have done for other legions. I haven't seen any Space Wolf ones I liked, but I've seen some really cool ones for other legions where they'd use different pieces across the chest. So that felt like an obvious error. So I shaped it right the way down, and then I thought, right, what can I find to go across the chest? And I found this piece off Ragnar, and I'd used Ragnar in the past on another video, so I didn't have much left of that kit, but I did have this piece. I thought, brilliant, there we go. There's no waste there. So popped it on, loads of plastic glue, shaved it down a bit, and then I thought, I'll be clever, I'll put this clamp on it because it'll help hold it around on the curve, which I think in and of itself wasn't a bad idea. I'm just a bit of an idiot, and the pressure, the clamp was too strong, so that the strength of the clamp coupled with the plastic glue consequently melted and smushed some of the detail, which was frustrating. But it's no biggie. We can fix it. We can layer things up, do it. I knew I was almost certainly going to have to replace the wolf claw bit, that part, the leg, because of the way it sort of was moving. It didn't work with how the pose is. So I knew I was going to have to clip that off, and I thought, we can fix it. This isn't the end of the world. It's not a competition piece or something like that. So again, digging through the little tray for the other wolf pelts, I think this piece is off the old Space Wolf Terminator kit, which was a wonderful kit. I must pick up a couple more before they disappear. Obviously, they're not for sale anymore, but they'll still be around in lots of places, I imagine. So I grabbed that piece. I'm pretty sure that's where it's from. It might be off the Venerable Dreadnought kit, but I'm pretty sure it's off the Terminator kit. And this one was kind of perfect. You know, all I had to do was just shave the back of it down a little bit, and it fit in there. It fit in there really, really nicely. And as I say, I just didn't want to have to do any sculpting. You know, I'm getting used to doing the 2-week videos now and figuring out how much time there is on it. But you know, we're still start of the year is a very busy period for us. Anyway, we're sort of planning out what's happening, and we've got the end of the Kickstarter, and then we've obviously got the paints that we've been working on. So I was just trying to work out sort of how much time there is, and I thought, well, do you know what? Like, sculpting is not something I want to bring in just yet. So a bit of plastic glue and, you know, pushing, usually all right. It did mean, however, that I ended up building the model in far fewer sub-assemblies than, say, I typically would. But actually, because of the paint scheme, because it was all going to be grey, it wasn't so necessary. I think in the end, the only bit I left off was the right arm. Like I just blue tacked that piece on. And you can see I'm using these orange handled things. Now, if you've not come across these before, these are called side cutters. Now, they look like your clippers that you're typically using normally with the hobby, but they're a little bit different. They have a much sharper blade. They sort of have a flat edge, and they have a blade, so the blade sort of cuts towards that flat edge, so you get a very, very clean, sharp cut with them. So you can use them a little bit like you would a knife. They're excellent for like removing the bits, you know, where a sprue meets a piece and stuff like that. But they're also really useful for getting clean cuts when you're doing the kit bashing. That either would be perhaps a little bit risky to do with a knife, or would just take ages to do with the knife. So for me, like, I have a normal pair of clippers that I can just chonk bits off with. Then I have the side cutters, and then I'll also use my knife. And for me, you know, I stick a new X-Acto blade in my knife for every project like this. You know, once this one was done, the blade went in the bin. I think in the scheme of things, it's worth it. You need that sharp blade. It makes the job easier and obviously safer. Anyway, so here I am just clipping a few more necklacey bits off to fix the that slight squidge issue that we had there. So I think in the end I used the necklace off the Rune Priest model that came out recently that I used some parts of when I did that jump pack guy a while back, and then just a piece off the grey Hunter's kit. Now, another area where I thought I'd be able to bring in a little bit of detail, and this was a design element that I saw feature on a lot of the Space Force stuff, are these sort of diamond-shaped gems. So I thought, great, the belt buckle there, it's super cool. We can get something in there. Fishing around, found this back piece from one of the variants of the Venerable Dread model. Perfect. So again, here you can see I'm using the side cutters here to help me get a really sharp thing. If I didn't have them, I'd use a razor saw, something like that. But the side cutters just speed it up a little bit, and just make the whole process a lot more enjoyable. Tiny little bit of cutting to get them to fit, so they look sort of sunk in rather than just glued on top. Popped it in, and yeah, I think it's perfect. I think it looks like that was how it was designed to go, which is always my aim with these kit bashes. You know, I always kind of want it to look as much like it's an out the box model as possible. That's just my personal enjoyment. I really don't mind if people think it's a conversion or not. I just want them to think it's cool, you know, or enjoy looking at it. You know, I think it's cool, so I'm doing it. So yeah, but you can see here, like it's really coming together. Well, in fact, you can see here it's completely come together. Yeah, I think we've achieved what we were setting out to do with this. So it's making it look like if GW were to do a Space Wolf Praetor in Saturnine armour, would it look something like this? And I think it absolutely would. Are there more things I do? I'd be tempted to maybe look at adding a few bonding studs on there, but it's already going quite a busy model. And I say, I feel like Heresy stuff is generally a little more plain, and I wanted to try and adhere to that. So I've left certain elements on there. They're very clearly sort of Imperial style iconography. So the shin, his left shin, I've left that wreath and everything as is. You know, I don't think 30k wolves, I like little elements of that. It doesn't have to all be 11, you know, turn it up to 11 wolfiness. But then we have added some nice sort of pelts and decorations and stuff. You know, we want him to look like a gnarly old warrior, you know, gnarly old Spear Dane kind of thing, which was the inspiration with him. You'll see in here as well, I've used the shield. That comes from one of that 3-man unit that they released for the 40k wolves, where they've all got like a wolf companion. Head takers, maybe I think it's called. I wanted it because I wanted like a buckler type shield for him to use with this bit. I thought that would look really cool. And as I've gone on and painted him, I'm pretty sure, because I'm recording this before I finish painting him, I'm pretty sure I've left the shield off in the end because I didn't think it needed it. I do really like it though. So I've painted it anyway. So I will blue tack it on and have it on or off. I'm not sure. I can't decide which I prefer. Let me know in the comments which you prefer. But yeah, and obviously the head is huge, right? And the head I found in that new Space Force kill team, the challenge with the head was so many of them have a top knot or hair of some description, and that makes the fit really, really tricky. But this guy was bald, which made the fit a lot easier to do, and also just looked like some nasty old bugger, and I thought that's perfect. That real sort of disdain for that look on his face, I thought was perfect. So yeah, couldn't be happier with the build. Let's go on and paint him. So I'm a fairly boring man. When it comes to colours, I like browns, I like greys, and I reckon I've probably got more greys than any other paints, which might be one of the reasons why I enjoy painting Space Force so much. But I was just determined. I still have never quite nailed the grey I envisage them having. And recently I've picked up the new-ish P3 paints, that wave one they did on Kickstarter a while back, and I've been really enjoying using them on some other projects, but I hadn't used many of the greys, surprisingly. So in the end I grabbed a couple out there, and I decided, I picked three I wanted to have a go with that I thought would give me roughly the tone of grey that I was after, and airbrushing them on. So here I'm spraying at about 25 psi. I'm using a 0.4mm needle and nozzle, and I'm using our new Harder and Steenbeck Signature Series Evolution. So I give it I'm just using normal Vallejo airbrush thinner because that's what I have. If I had, Life Colour thinner, which is the other thinner I use a lot, I would use that one instead. But just thinned it down roughly 50-50, maybe a touch more, just to get it going through nice and smoothly, until I think 3 coats gave me a really nice smooth base coat to work from. So then it was deciding on, okay, where's the light source going to be coming from? Now, I'm not going to go for particularly extreme shading here with the airbrush. It's not my cup of tea typically, and I wanted to keep this. I really wanted this model to have a nice feel of the really old Heresy models, like that sort of Black Book era, but done in my own way, it's still a little bit that vibe. So I didn't want too high a contrast when it came to light and dark on the model. So I decided, looking at him, he's going to be looking down to his left and stuff, twisted slightly. That's going to be the golden viewing angle. So where's an interesting direction to have the light coming from? And in this case, it was obviously above, but also slightly to the right as we look at him. I think would give us just a slightly more interesting look. And then the back, you just pick what you like on the back as well. You can't look at them both at the same time, right? So if it looks more dramatic on the back, having it one way doesn't necessarily make sense with the front. Doesn't matter, you can't see them both. So then it was a case of working my way around the model, imagining where that light source was coming from, and then using my airbrush to represent that. The cone of paint coming out of my airbrush would represent that light source hitting the model, and therefore highlighting it. Again, still spraying 25 psi, 0.4, all the same. And then for the final highlight, I mixed in a little bit of the lighter grey, so I went 50-50 with the 2 greys here. And I've just moved slightly closer to the model, and I'm just going to hit all those same areas that I hit with the previous grey. I've tried to leave in as much of that footage as possible, and just make them a bit more intense, a bit brighter as well. Please let me know as well what sort of thing you'd like to see with these videos. With them being fortnightly generally now, I can take a little bit more time on them. I'm quite happy for the videos to be sort of 40 minutes plus. I enjoy those slightly bigger projects, slightly more involved things, but I want them to contain just useful stuff. A lot of it's just me rambling and hobbying, but hopefully there's the odd thing in there that can help out with your hobby. So yeah, let me know if leaving this sort of thing in is useful. Speeding it up, because I think it's really boring in real time, but if you want it in real time, let me know as well. But you see here, I'm never really trying to do anything in one go, just going back, tweaking it until we get there. And I love it. I mean, if you like this look, just don't do the next stage that I do with oils. I think it's still a fairly dramatic look anyway with the airbrush. Next up, I wanted to prep for decals before I do any oil work so that it fades the decals into the paint job as well. Now, I'm using polyurethane gloss varnish here. I'm airbrushing it and I'm using my normal airbrush thinner, and I probably put on about 5 coats of this using a hairdryer to dry them between each. Polyurethane varnish is stronger than your acrylic varnish, or finishing varnish you might hear them called, but it does take longer to cure. Technically it takes about a day to cure. I don't tend to wait that long, but I do give it a good couple of hours to cure before I start doing my decals on it. I think given how thin we apply it, I feel that, you know, it's absolutely fine. It's more than touch dry. I'm confident and I don't have issues when I use things over the top of it, but it is something to be aware of, that it does take a little longer to cure than your typical acrylic varnishes. So I've just sprayed it on the areas that I think I'm going to want to put the decals. I love a bit of knotwork stuff. The knotwork stuff just feels really 30k, so I enjoy using it where I can. So once that was all dry and done, we've done a video just about doing decals, which I'll link up there. I'm going to do a little bit of oil dot filtering. It's a technique I love, and I've done an entire video on it, which again I will link to, which is just talks about oil dot filtering. But for this one, I decided to pick a couple of colours that were kind of close to what I was painting, you know, greys and dark greys and browns and stuff. And then I also wanted to add a little purple in there. So I chose a violet, and I always pop it down on a piece of cardboard, or here you can see on a piece of kitchen paper, just to leach out any excess oil. And you can see loads came out of that bitumen colour actually in the end. Then I'm going to use some just DIY store odourless white spirits here to thin it with, because I'm doing it for a video. They evaporate dry quicker. Normally I use something like Sansador, which is an artist grade one from Winsor & Newton. And then I'm going to use a couple of brushes. I need one with a point to apply the dots fairly accurately, and then I need one with a nice soft tip to smoosh them around. And as I say, I did an entire video on this recently, which I will link up, and you can do it. But essentially you're just going to use this process to subtly, or up to you really how subtle, but to alter the surface beneath. So I'm not looking to fundamentally change the colours, but I'm just looking to add little tints here and there to make it a little bit more interesting. It's not for everybody, this look, I understand that. I just love it. I enjoy the process itself and I enjoy the results. So basically any model I can do it on, I will do it on, just because it just adds to my enjoyment of the whole thing. And I do this after the decals because I like, I say, how it sort of ages them in and blends them into the armour itself. I'm not going to do tons of chipping and battle damage and all that sort of stuff on this model. I just fancied not getting stuck in that rut and doing the same thing every single time. But I just wanted to evoke a certain feel with this model, and this I felt was an essential part of that for me. So say once the decals were done, and then I just matte varnished over the decals, you're fine to sort of apply the oils. It's not going to do anything to your acrylic paintwork underneath, so don't worry about that at all. So I knew the face was going to be important, and I knew it was going to be a thing that I was really going to enjoy doing on the project. It took me so long to find the right sculpt. I was so pleased when I did find it. I wanted to do a really nice job on it. So I started off over a black primer. I'm just going to give it a really stark zenithal sort of highlight. So by that I mean I'm going to spray white down directly from above. Use whatever white you like. Some people like to use white ink. I used to use Tamiya flat white, loads, still do. Here I'm using the upcoming Minicolour white. I'm using the Tamiya X28 thinner with it because it works really well with it. And just gives me a nice smooth white. But here I say spraying from almost directly on top, just to give me quite dramatic light and shadow, essentially to work with. I love a sort of slightly ruddy Caucasian skin tone. I love to start off with Night Questor Flesh. It's sort of my go-to for that. But for this guy, I did want to make him that little bit more kind of pale, kind of go for that Scandinavian vibe. I know it's kind of, obvious, but I like it. I think it suits him really well. So I have heavily thinned this Night Questor, probably three parts thinner to paint. Again, still just spraying 25 psi, 0.4mm needle and nozzle. And I spray that all over, and therefore I'm letting the pre-shade, so the black and the white underneath, do the light and dark for me, just with one colour. Now I'm going to mix in a little bit of this lighter flesh colour from P3. I'm not sure the exact ratio, but I'll say 50-50. and spray this from exactly the same place I sprayed the white from, but just focusing on more of the front of the face. Then we're going to do the opposite. So rather than just pump the highlights up a little bit, we want to pump the shadows up a little. And here I'm using a mix of these AK Quick Gem paints. I've been playing around with these a lot the last few months. I'm not sold on them as a contrast replacement. I still prefer working with GW contrast paints, but there's certain colours in this range that I do really like using. And these are two of them. And I wasn't quite sure. I didn't want to go full on red in the shadows, that reddish flesh. Wanted it a little bit more, because I want this dude to be old, right? So I wanted just that little bit cold, a little bit more weathered. So I mixed in a bit of the vampire flesh, which just has a bit more purple in it, a bit more grey in it. And it was perfect. And here we turn the model upside down and spray it from below. So none of this is particularly skillful. It's just pointing the airbrush and the model in the right direction, and it gives you, I think, a fantastic base to work from. You could just leave it at that if you want to, but I then enjoy, I really like painting faces, so now it was time to go in with exactly the same colours, but I'm going in with my brush here, and I'm just accentuating those areas of light and shade. I am making sure that certain areas that were hit with the airbrush, because of it, the limitations of that, I correct so that they make a little bit more sense. And also just, I want to give the model a more painted look. I don't care for when things look mega airbrushed. I like it as part of the process, so I wanted to go in here with a brush and work on it. And actually, I'm really, really pleased with how it's coming out. It's such a great face sculpt. I'm definitely going to try and pick up a couple more of him for use in the future on different projects. Really enjoyed using it. But mainly it was working with the shadow colours, so I would mix that in with some of the Night Questor, and I would just say tweak the volumes that I would already got in certain colours and blend them together nicely, and then just add a little bit more definition to certain shadows as well. Then for his hair or his beard, at first I was going to go grey, and then I thought, nah, it'd be nicer to do like a faded out blonde look. So I grabbed, just went to the shelf and grabbed 3 of these GW ones. And then that lighter flesh tone one I'd used as well. And this was a case of layering them up. And when it came to highlighting, it was highlighting the top edge rather than running the highlight all the way down the strand of sculpted hair. It was just popping. Oh, there's the airbrush compressor going in the background. That's a slightly leaky quick release valve I've got on there. Really good for interrupting filming. So you see here, so just trying to focus the highlight a little bit more towards the top where the light would be coming down onto it. And I love this trio of colours, so I'm really good I've found this one. It's gone straight in the recipe book for use on some Empire projects. And a dwarf Thane with the standard. I quite like. I think this would look good on him. Yeah, I really love how this face is coming out. You'll notice it looks a little bit different on the final model, and that is because I dropped it on the floor, and then as I wheeled my chair back to get it, I wheeled over the top of it, which scrunched a load of the paint off. I was quite fortunate, it just knocked the paint off the top, the crown of his head, but it really, it carved into the model. So in the end, what I did was paint those in as if there were more scars on him, and I think it's blended in perfectly nicely. So I'm very was quite relieved at that, but I was pretty devastated when I rolled over that, because I think this is one of the nicest faces I've done in a long time. And again, it reminded me and reinforced to me why I want to be doing these videos every fortnight, because I didn't have to overly rush any element. It didn't mean I could be indulgent with anything, but yeah, it was really, really fun, really, really nice to do. I need to pick maybe some of those new Chaos Marauder models or something. I don't know. I need to have a play around with this a bit more. The Cathay I'm loving doing, but obviously that's a different skin tone on the Cathay models. I'd really like to have a play around more with this recipe and push it a bit further. But I think for gaming, I think it's bang on this. So metals I wanted to keep nice and simple. I think let the paint do the work. For the silvers, I chose to use Exhaust Manifold. This is a Metal Colour Series paint by Vallejo. It's really, really runny. It's brilliant in the airbrush. It's also great, flows great with a hairy brush, but it does separate out very quickly. So when I use it, I tend to just put it in a little well palette. Like, I mean, I just use upturned bases, but, you know, well palette, just because it will split out so fast. Most metallics will on a wet palette, but this stuff's like almost instantaneous. So just a couple of drops and it will do the job. And then for the sort of gold and brass areas, or bronze areas rather, on the model, I'm going to use Old Faithful. I'm going to use Decayed Metal here by scale 75. Beautiful colour, like using this paint a lot. Doesn't flow quite as well as the Metal Colour series stuff, but it's still a pleasure to use. And I'm just going to use a couple of sort of tried and tested recipes for this one. Now, I had yet another model falling on the floor instant. I just blue tapped this guy on the top of my miniatures holder, and in the end was like, right, no more of this. It's getting more towards the end of a paint job. I can't be affording for those things to happen. So yeah, just use the magnet provided there. And those are the little egg mini holders that AO do, Artist Opus do, and you can get the Cult Paint ones, the black ones. We get a little kickback when you do those, but they're lovely things. I've used them for a long time now, you know, since they were out. We had the prototype ones. I love them, find them very, very, very comfy. So next up, just wanted to add a little bit more depth to the metal. So I'm going to use Gharaghaks Sewer, which is this nice, deep, warm brown colour, contrast paint, watered down slightly, so it's just a wash now. It's not really a contrast paint, into the shadows for that. And then once it was dry, I'm going to stipple over the top using a mix of the Decayed Metal and some Runelord Brass this time, so that nice pale sort of gold colour. Nothing crazy, just sort of little stipples over roughly where I think the light would hit, so sort of the edges and sort of the broader areas that are upwards facing. I need to do a model soon where I spend a lot of time on the metal. I think I would enjoy exploring that further and pushing that a little bit further. And then I wanted to separate out the various areas on the model that I had base coated with Decayed Metal. I want them to be different metals. So this gold, I've chosen to use a more yellow gold. So this is Elven Gold mixed in to the Decayed Metal. This is from Scale 75 as well. And just mix that in, and again, just stippled it on the jewellery bits of him, just to bring that little bit of variation in there. I like quite a limited palette on a model, a limited amount of colours on a model, but I always find that metals are a nice way to introduce a little bit of extra colour and variation. Then for the bronze areas, so the whatever these weird power, I think these are the shield generators actually, this bit, but anything that I felt was to do with that element of the model, or of the the actual thing, as it were, the suit of armour, I'm just giving a heavy wash, which is this mix of Gharaghaks shade with a little dot of Pterodon in there, just to age it up a bit. So another thing that I thoroughly enjoy painting, and might well explain why I like painting Space Wolves so much, because there's loads of armour and loads of fur and leather and skin and stuff, is leather. And at first I was just going to do my kind of fallback sort of brown leather that I do on a lot of projects, with a recipe I've been using recently, using some of the Minicolour paints that I'm really enjoying. And then I wondered about, would a lighter leather, like more of a cream type leather, look good on the model? And again, this is proof it's nicer to have a bit more time on the projects rather than just racing in and getting it ready. And I thought, I'll just slap it on and see how it looks. And it looked fine. I thought it looked really nice. And it might help me in my sort of quest to make my models look a little less boring. Still boring, but a little less boring. And so slapped it on, thought that colour works fine. So now I was going to build it up in the way I will typically build up leather. So I'm starting with the dark colour and then working through to the lightest. So I've base coated it using Peat, which is basically just like a burnt umber colour. It's a upcoming Minicolour paint, but any burnt umber will work well. And then I start mixing in Baneblade Brown. And initially I'm just going to do loads of dashes, more or less in the same direction. So this is almost like my base coat, but it's sort of a slightly textured base coat. Not physically textured, obviously, but painted on textured. So that sort of cracked leather look. And then as I add increasingly more of the Baneblade in, and then ultimately the lighter colour as well, I will be a little bit more random with the scratches. And certainly once I start getting to the stage just after this one, where I think I'm working with a Baneblade and the lighter colour mix, I will start doing or focusing more of those scratches on the areas of light. So start to introduce sort of light and shadow. Up until that point, I'm not really worrying about it. I'm just adding texture into the leather. But then something I need to do is still, if I've put light and dark across other elements of the model, I need to do the same with the leather or it's going to look a bit sort of incongruous. So start to focus a few more of these scratches on the sort of more prominent parts, which I think will catch the light slightly. And obviously it reflects differently to armour, but I think it still needs to be shown there. And in a way, this is no different to stippling. We were just using lots of scratches to create the marks rather than dots with the things you see here. I'm being a little bit more deliberate as we're getting lighter and lighter and focusing in on it. I'm not worrying about any of the recesses or the studs at this point. At the very end, I can go back in with the peat, with the darkest colour, the burnt umber, and I will just kind of blackline all those elements of it. So I mean, just paint those back in with the dark colour. Kind of like how you would use a wash, but you just use the peat. I think I mixed in a bit of black actually as well, just to really make the shadows a bit deeper. But it's important, but also just means you haven't got to worry about it at this stage. Don't worry about being neat. Just enjoy making all the scratches and having fun doing it. And I absolutely love how it's come out. Very, very happy with this. And in the spirit of trying new things out, trying new colours, trying to go a little bit lighter, a little bit brighter with stuff, I thought, okay, let's not do, because originally I was going to do a black wolf pelt on him. I thought it would look really, really nice. I really like black as like a secondary sort of colour on a model, but I thought, okay, let's try something different. And I have been reading a lot of old white dwarfs recently, and in them was an heavy metal guide for painting wolf fur, and I thought, okie dokie, let's have a go, let's have some fun. And it starts off with, I think it was bleached bone or whatever it was back then. Try and remember if I can fish it out. I'll put a link to it. But yeah, since you start with the light colour and then you work darker towards the middle of the pelt, and it looks great. And in fairness, if you look at pictures or you look at pelts, or fleeces, things like that in real life, that's often how the fur will, the colours and stuff will go. Yeah, no, it's just great. It's really fun. What did I learn? What did I do? Well, I kept the paint nice and wet, so it's pretty dilute here. It's not quite wash consistency, but it's not a million miles off. Using a nice big brush here so I can hold plenty of it in the brush without having to go back to the palette. And I'm not waiting for the previous layers to dry, barring that initial base coat, which I did with the rack bone colour, which was that original leather colour. And yeah, the nice, you just sort of fettle around with it for a bit, fiddle around, get it looking sort of roughly how you want, get the ratios of the light to the dark right, and then get darker and darker towards the middle. It's really easy and really fun, and I love it. And so I need to paint a wolf or something. I was thinking as I was doing it, I'm not entirely sure I've ever painted a wolf pelt, which sounds ridiculous. I've definitely painted fur often, but I don't know that I've ever done a wolf pelt, typically because when I've done Space Wolves, they've often been Heresy ones, which I haven't tended to do much wolfy stuff on. And usually it's line guys as well. It's not characters, because they've been for how to paint a Space Wolf type videos. I think back to and I've made a lot of Space Wolves that have used a lot of fur, but I haven't often painted many of them. And basically anyone I do paint, I do on the channel. So yeah, I need to paint more wolf furs. It's really fun. It looks great. And once it was dry, I decided to do a little bit of highlighting. Just to, again, I think it helps finish it, makes it look sort of very purposeful. So this was a mixture of the lighter coloured paints and just did a bit of highlighting. Yeah, I mean, I wish I'd just done a massive wolf for the video. This would have been great fun. Could have got it done in about 20 minutes. I think it would look pretty cool. And I want to play around with this. I want to play around with this with different colours as well. I've got that the Rohan movie. What was it called? The animation that came out last year, Christmas last year, or just over a year ago. War of the Rohirrim. And there's like a snow troll in there, and fortunately I've done a model of him. I picked him up ages ago. I thought this could be really fun to do his fur in this kind of style. So maybe I'll break him out and have a go. But yeah, what can I say? Painting fur is brilliant. Yeah, and you can just fiddle around and get it looking how you want, and it's very relaxing. And I love how it looks on the model. Those lighter elements really, really working well and helping give this model interest. I couldn't be more pleased with how this is shaping up. Still plenty of time to ruin it though. Just like I wanted the leather to be different to the fur, even though we're going to be using quite similar colours, I realised that was going to be the case with the teeth as well. And because of the way I've decorated the model, and I've put a lot of the pieces of interest, the ornaments, the accoutrement stuff around his chest, like next to each other, I had to figure out, okay, how do I get separation between these? How do we make them look different and still look interesting? So similar colours that we've used previously for the leather and the fur, but just a few different ones purely for the sake of making them not identical. But this time I was like, okay, well, let's do the teeth where they get lighter then to darker. So you'll have the leather done in a certain way, lots of scratches. You'll have the fur where it's dark in the centre and then light on the outside. And then we'll do the teeth where it gets light at the top and then dark towards the end, towards the tip. So I base it using a bone colour. I think I use Karak Stone here. And then I'm using colours like bark, which is a mini colour, but you could use something like, I don't know, what's probably drier bark, actually is not dissimilar, but just, different brown, down darker. And then the difference here was I went in with an ivory here and just wanted to do a little bit of very tiny little highlights towards the brightest point of the teeth, so that the brightest point was almost a white rather than that more cream colour that we've got, say, on the fur. And again, when you're using these really close to white paints, you've got to be careful. They dry out super quick on the brush, so keep them nice and dilute, and then you can draw just a couple of little dashes. And I think if we look at him here, I think he's achieved exactly what we set out. It's interesting, it's different, they're not mushing into one too much. Very happy, and seeing as I had to put loads of them on because I squished it, I'm really pleased with how those look. I mentioned that I wasn't going to go crazy with the battle damage and weathering and chipping on this guy. I feel like all the ways in which I have been doing my painting incorporates age and weathering and corrosion and all that sort of thing. And I just didn't feel that he needed what I often do, which is loads of like tippy tappy chips and loads of that sort of edge highlights and scratches and this, that and the other. I didn't feel the model required that. And I'd already got some nice bright elements on there with the leather and the fur and stuff. So I still want there to be some damage on there. I still want it to look like that. When you look at him, he doesn't look pristine or anything. But in the end, I just went for some nice sort of simple brown chips on him. So for that, I used chocolate by Minicolour, but you could use something like Gharaghaks Hide would look good too. And then I was going to give him a simple oil pin wash. So I'm two birds, one stone here. Really, I'm going to do a pin wash to bring some definition into the recessage and between the two different parts. And also by using a dark brown like this sepia colour, it's just going to add a little bit of dirt and grime, but not too much. As I say, that wasn't the goal with this project. This was much more about composition and sort of colour choices, value choices more than anything, light and dark, trying to understand those a little bit better for personally. And now I'm confident with that. I know I can bring that to future models where we can also incorporate more effort and more time on things like the weathering. I always find with projects, wherever I'm doing them, I always like to focus on a couple of things, and the rest I sort of fall back to known quantities. We don't want to push myself on everything on every model. So to make our wash-ups nice and simple, again, we're using the same sort of tools as we did earlier for the dot filtering, and we're mixing our wash-up to be the consistency you can see here. So it floods off the brush really easily, sits in those recesses, but then it doesn't split out too quickly. Now, I haven't done anything else to the model, haven't needed to prep him for any reason. The finish on the model is kind of matte. It's got the oil dot filtering over it, which has matted it down anyway. That oil dot filtering was finished probably day and a half or so before, maybe 2 days before I've done this wash. So there was absolutely no fear at all of this reactivating any of that dot filtering. But you'll be fine as long as you're gentle with this stuff and you're not absolutely flooding the model. As long as the stuff's touch dry, you're not going to have many problems. I don't tend to have many issues when I'm doing it. And yes, just focusing on recesses. So I didn't just slop it all over the model. I was just pin washing it into areas. And those that I wanted to be a bit dirty and grimy, I did just give it a glaze over with this. But it was, did the job really, really nicely, I think. So yeah, very, very pleased with that. I was really umming and ahhing about, do I do a dark grey? Do I do a black? I went for the dark brown in the end. Sepia is a favourite of mine. Speaking of favourites of mine, I used to love using enamels, and then I stopped because the smell is horrendous. And then I started using them again recently, and I remember why I love them. I love the look of them. You can treat them exactly the same way you do oil paints. So you can thin them with mineral spirits, white spirit, clean them up the same way, and treat them like an oil wash in how we're doing it here. So I've just washed that straight over the metal. Now the base, I wasn't going to bother including stuff on the base, but I thought with this, we've got the time now. We've got these longer videos. People have said they don't mind the videos being longer, and I think this one's probably going to be close to an hour, which is ridiculous. I don't know if that's what they'll all be. Well, I guess we'll just find out. But I've included it. The basing is essentially what I do often on my models. If you look at any of my kill team stuff, I do more detail in that. But I use the colours that are on my palette to mix up browns and greys. In this case, nice and easy because it's full of browns and greys, just to paint any rock and stuff like that. Keep it wet, keep it mixed together. I just think it looks quite nice and natural, and it doesn't need a lot of thinking. And I tend to do this at the end of a session, at the end of the day, because I like let it dry overnight. So it's just a nice way of using the paint up. I'm not having to focus. All this is going through the motions, so I'm all burnt out by the end of the day. I'm not having to worry about thinking, about being precise and all that. It's just nice and relaxing. To be fair, if basing is something you're into, then Patreon's definitely worth jumping in on. Andy goes through his basing for each project he does, and his bases, as I'm sure you will have seen, are absolutely wonderful on his projects. This week's video, in fact, was focusing on the bases, was a real deep dive into moss and ferns, which was really good. I really enjoyed that one. Then I'm using Dark Earth texture paste, and then just sprinkling over the top of that some sort of, what do you call it? I mean, this is crushed up fossil from one I found in my garden, but it's just, sort of ground texture. I don't know what you call it. Ballasty stuff, whatever. Bit of earth and dirt. Give it a bit more interest. I like it anyway. And then I will do a bit of paint and stuff over the top of it. The colour of the dark earth doesn't really matter at all. It's just a texture paste that I was after. And as I say, leave it to dry overnight. So it's a nice one to do at the end of a session. Well, finally we're getting to the end of the mini, so it's just a few little finishing touches, finagly bits. I didn't want to go the full like turquoise verdigris thing on the bronze this time, again, because I do it quite often and I fancy something a little more subtle for this one. So just went with dropping in a little bit more of a green wash. This time I decided to use Poxwalker. I use this green over gold quite often to give a nice sort of tarnish, and actually I think it's worked really well on the on this bronze colour. Actually, I really like the finish that the watered down Gharaghaks and Pterodons left on it, which really need to consider that when I'm varnishing things as well. Then the spear, it's so cool in and of itself. I didn't feel that doing a coloured power weapon thing was fitting with the rest of the mini. So I wanted to keep it simple, but I wanted to keep it interesting. So I'm just going to do a bright to dark silver on it. But to add a little bit of interest, I thought, well, I'll stipple the colours on, just again to make it look sort of scratched and used and all of that. So first I stipple on a dark silver, then I start mixing in a brighter silver. These are just whatever ones you've got that work well. I wouldn't necessarily use Metal Colour Series for this because it's a very thin paint. It's not that, I don't find it that good for doing this with. It just sort of flows together. Whereas these slightly thicker ones, they actually sort of stay where you put them, so you get the marks that you're trying to make on them. And then obviously a little sharp edge highlight there, just again, so it doesn't look too sloppy. And I love how it comes out. I never liked this sword on the Praetor. I love it as a spear. I think it looks absolutely awesome as a spear, and thankfully I have quite a few of them. So yeah, ooh, could do a unit. I hadn't even thought of that. That might look cool. And then I had some Gharaghaks Sewer and Ratling Grime left on the palette from earlier stages. I thought that might look quite nice, so just glazed a little bit of that into the shadows. And then lastly, I love effects. I love a variety of finishes on the model as well. So I thought, yeah, a bit of Tamiya Clear Red for blood effects. I was really tempted to gloss the gems as well, but I didn't. And then smush a few pigments on the base, like I mentioned earlier, keeping them natural. So I think I've got Metal Slag and Natural Sienna that I'm just sort of working into the base here. I like it all dusty and grotty. I guess it reminds me of the old Imperial Armour stuff. And again, I don't want the base to remotely detract from the model here. So there we are. There he is. My interpretation of a Wolf Lord in Saturnine Terminator armor, or Wolf Praetor of the Space Wolf Legion in Saturnine Terminator armor, or my Warhammer 30k Spear Dane, effectively, which was the inspiration for the whole thing. I think this is my favourite Space Wolf that I've done so far. I really loved that Priest I did a couple of months back, but this is the grey I've always wanted, that Storm Grey that I think of in the stories and I see in that artwork. And yeah, I it's always nice when something works, which sounds obvious, but it doesn't always. So yeah, very satisfied with that. And again, let me know on the shield thing. I think he's cooler without the shield. I'm pretty sure he is. But I will say I'll blue tack it on and have him keep him on the desk for a week or two and see if I can decide which I do prefer. And I've thoroughly enjoyed him. I say for me, the big take home from him was trying out going lighter on some of the areas that typically I would have done a darker colour in the past. It's really helped. I always worry if I go too light on stuff, it'll end up looking too, I don't know, gaudy or toy-like or something. I'm sure it's just an issue I have. I'm sure it's not an actual thing. But I'm trying to break through those little things that I feel are maybe holding me back on getting more satisfying results with some of the things I'm doing. And it's just always a good day when I'm doing Space Wars. You guys might think we do them quite often on the channel, and we probably do. But I want to keep doing them. I just love them. And in fact, the video I've got for you guys in next video, so a couple of weeks' time, is more Space Wars. However, these ones are, well, certainly more wolves, and they're of a slightly different variety. Again, ones I've wanted to do for several years now, and there is a kit that I thought this is perfect to do a little project with these guys on. So I hope you enjoy that one when it comes out. As I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. It's it's a bit longer. I said they would be, now with them being fortnightly, they're not always going to be this long, but this felt natural. Didn't feel like it dragged at any point as I've been editing it or talking. So please let me know with your feedback what you'd like to see more of. We can certainly start scheduling it in, and I can start focusing on it all a little bit more. Thank you ever so much for all of your support. If you've got any questions at all, pop them down in the comments. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Take care. I'll see you next time. If you like any of the models that you've seen in this video, but you don't have the time or the wherewithal to do them yourselves, then consider giving Ben an email at commissions@cultofpaint.com. Maybe he can help you out.